Good morning to all of you, and thank you for joining us today. We are pleased to have all of you here with us. I'm Anton Thalan, the Chief Evangelist for Luminary Learning Solutions, and I will be the voice of the webinar this morning. We welcome you to the new and improved Season 3 of Reset and Go. In continuation to Saturdays of Learning with Luminary, we present Revive and Thrive. As the saying goes, gear up and get your learning on. In today's segment of Revive and Thrive, we are discussing breaking down silos towards collaboration, an exchange of real experiences and validated ideas on which to leverage your success and truly thrive. Our subject matter experts, and we are truly honored to have on the panel this morning, Venura Mendis, Head of ICT Business, Dialog Axiata. And joining him is Dhakshitha Serasundara, Director at Deutsche Bank. Steering the conversation today is Azeem Saheer, a trainer with Luminary Learning Solutions. Gentlemen, dive right in. Azeem, over to you.
Thank you, Anton, and very good morning to everyone who's joining wherever you are. And it is again Reset and Go Season 3, and we're going to talk an important topic for the current corporate world. I believe not on corporate, it's the whole aspect of living which we are talking about, which is breaking down silos towards collaboration. Once again, I would like to, on behalf of Luminary, I would like to thank Venura Mendis, Head of ICT Business Dialog Axiata, and Dhakshitha Serasundara, Director at Deutsche Bank. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining this conversation. I was just running through yesterday about searching what has happened in the globally, breaking down silos. I read about Jack Welch, the then CEO of GE, General Electrical, once conveyed. He said the speed of globalization and technology innovation in 21st century would rigor organized to work very differently, with short decision cycles, more engagement, employee engagement, strong collaboration, communication. In a summary, he says boundaryless organization, which we are now currently talking. This was done long time ago. He was stated this, but we are talking with this. So with this content, when we talk about collaboration, one of the agenda we were highlighting is the silo mentality. So I would like to pose this question, start the conversation with Dhakshitha. It's over to you. Thank you very much for coming forward to take the question first in hand with a great experience. Dhakshitha, what would be your experience or your views on causing this silo mentality in an organization?
Thank you, Azeem. Good day, everyone. Hope everyone's safe. As you very correctly pointed out, Azeem, this Jack Welch comes up in this when we discuss about silo mentality and collaborating, across silos. Now, this concept actually is not a new concept. It came about 25, 30 years ago, but still we do have organizations which do still work in silos. My view is that one reason for the silo mentality and silo structure is that when organizations grow, they tend to get managed, across silos, right? So you have for management purposes, you tend to build silos, and that actually starts working against the organization in terms of reaching its objectives. So if you look at an organization, the silos are created, right, for sometimes for management ease. But what we need to do, right, organizations seldom change. They need to actually, generally they are changed by behavior of customers, innovation, and that's very key to us. and also due to regulations. So it is very, very important to understand how we need to break these silos and move forward. I will give me a minute to just tell you how silos can actually become negative to your organization. If you have a silo structure, right, it actually it increases cost, right? Because you might have technology in different silos that do not talk to each other, and it can also have uh, uh, factors like, you know, people just working in their own teams, right, which do not collaborate, and it increases cost. And also, I will probably get a chance to talk about this later, about trust, right? It is completely works against the trust that people try to build, you know, in terms of building teams and all that. So a concept that started 25, 30 years ago, which is still prevalent, but which is now coming out very much out there to understand why we need to break it down and move on.
Thank you, Dhakshitha. I think you brought up a couple of valid points. I think that's into my agenda as well, which I will be taking when the conversation goes. I would like to move to now to Venura. Venura, what would be your thought with your background in the experience? What causes this silo mentality in the organization?
Sure. So thank you, Azeem and Anton. And of course, good morning to everyone on the call. Let me start by saying that, I mean, just to emphasize how critical this is to the success of an organization. So essentially, from an outside-in view, customers look at organizations as an end-to-end experience. They are not really concerned about, you know, what's happening in engineering, what's happening in the support team, what's happening in sales. Now, this is exactly why large organizations that are structured around these functional specialities need to get this right. So it improves the customer experience, it improves operational efficiency, and it also focuses the whole organization on an outcome. As I mentioned, you know, the latest thinking around OKRs and KPIs, etc., are around an outcome and about creating value. And the only way you can do this is to have this running across the organization. But I think, as Dhakshitha, you know, rightly described, we get these silos because of the way an organization has evolved. As a startup, you know, a 10-person company trying to address a specific problem, it's relatively easy because you sit in the same room, the salesperson is talking to the engineer is talking to the support person, the CEO sits together with them, everyone is on the same page. But as an organization grows, you need to start building functional specialities, etc. You need to put in structure and process into the organization so you can run it and you can scale, because the same practices that work with 10 people sitting in a room don't work in a 2,000-person organization spread across, you know, globally or even regionally in Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, it's a nature of how people evolve. As you develop functional speciality, the communication starts to, you know, become much more structured around formal lines, and you have RASI matrices, responsibility, accountability, you know, consultant, informant, you know, that kind of structure in an organization immediately gets people to only focus on those areas. And then naturally, you know, their focus is about building their own space. Egos kick in, they tend to challenge each other. And unfortunately, when things go wrong, there's a lot of passing the ball. So all of these things actually cause those silos. They're also an outcome of the silos, but actually they make the situation worse. When you start passing the ball between teams, you start having a very adversarial view of the different teams. And you are starting to have very hard process lines drawn between these teams, which is a immediate response, but in the long term starts to hurt collaboration, because people always fall back to a process, and unfortunately people are emotional people, and end of the day it's about a human relationship and interactions between the team. Yes, the process must be there to facilitate the interactions, But if we don't get this piece right, and if there isn't the culture developed in the organization where you're actually working together to drive a single outcome, these silos start to form.
Interesting, Venura. What I would like to, because it led to me the next question, Venura, from your, I'll start from your end. Now you talked about, I think you had the experience, if I'm not mistaken, you from a startup to like very established organization. So you see the total difference around this, how that silo into collaboration. So you said structures, processes. When the organization grows, you need to place in structure. Of course, yes, but is it the pure reason why silo is existing?
Well, I think yes, process and structure is actually quite often put together to address the silo mentality. For example, having a OKR-driven performance management system where you have shared KPIs, all about trying to focus the organization to work in one direction, the various functional parts of the organization to work in one direction. But that doesn't mean the people will actually work together. That is really driven by the leadership in each of those functional areas. Because if the leadership doesn't set the right tone and the right tone of collaboration, the teams of course would follow, and you start gaping the system, you start gaping the process, and the process becomes an excuse. You hear things like, oh, I didn't respond to that customer. When a salesperson complains, you'll have a support person responding saying, well, I didn't know about that. No one told me. They didn't, lodge the ticket in the right system. But that's wrong. That's a negative attitude. You're not supporting the salesperson, nor are you looking after the customer. You might have a, OKR around, customer service, etc. But you've got this artificial boundary built around a functional speciality and a process which is driven by a system. So my view is, yes, there are tools and processes that are there to, alleviate the system, make it better. But if overall there isn't a view or, an open understanding, trust to work together to solve a problem, none of these processes or tools are going to help.
Thank you, Venura. Dhakshitha, what would be your ask on that?
Yeah, let me ask, start by asking a question. The way to understand whether an organization is really working in silos or not is to ask yourself the question. Look at your relationships that you have in the organizations, right? Most often, if you look at the people that you always talk to, people that you go to meetings and sit around with, and people that you use to take decisions, will give you a very good understanding of whether your organization is working in a silo or not. For example, if your emails, if you look at yesterday, how many emails did you send out and who were they in? Were they in all your silo or not? Right, will give you a very good indication. Now, in the banking industry, in common, something that we see is there is increasing collaboration that comes through. Sometimes not due to that you want your organization, but due to what is happening out there in the world. If you look at, for example, shall we say you are starting a project and there is a project team involved, and so you probably will have the marketing team, then you will have the sales team, you will have the people from, shall we say, from the finance side, who's how are we going to fund this project. Now, we all talk about this. Have you ever seen an HR person sitting in that discussion? The chances are there is no HR person, because this project is not something that a new team is coming together, probably team from your own organization that were working coming together. Is the HR person coming to that meeting and saying, okay, how many people in this project team and the team that is below you have time to do this? Have you looked at that angle? So if those people are not involved, And most of your relationships are your emails that you're sending, the decisions, the meetings that you're going for is in the same silo. That means your organization is in a silo mentality. Also, if you another way that you can understand whether your organization is in a silo or not is that if you happen to go down to, shall we say, the IT team, right? And if you ask an IT person, do you know how much our organization has to earn in terms of revenue for this year? The chances are that that IT person will not know, because his job is to work for IT, right? Then you tend to ask yourself the question, where is the vision and mission of an organization? Right? You tend to, when you enter an organization, you have a mission and a vision put up on the board, and sometimes it is only relegated to that. It should be that everybody in the organization should understand where we are, what is the revenue that an example, what is the revenue that we need to make for the year? And that has to be an understood common thing across the organization. Right? So these are the key things that will give you an understanding of whether you are actually working in silos or not.
Fantastic. If I'm not mistaken, what I've got is the outer environment. The whole world is talking about collaboration, so the whole organization is attracted to that. But internally, we still have that silo effect in terms of running the operation or running the business. So what I see, because I have a little background on the banking sector, so generally what happens is the customer service will not understand the operation element, operation will not understand the customer service element, and in between finance will just ask, okay, where is the numbers, where is the check, you know, that's the environment. So if you want to place a small line in between, if I may to ask, lack of clarity, lack of communication, or generating more conflict, these are the effect which create silos, Dhakshitha? What do you think? Because you talked about vision, understand the vision, understanding the operation model, because it always comes through like top-bottom approach, right? So it need to just to flush in down, make people aware. This is how you need to work. This is how. Is that the problem? Lack of clarity, lack of communication. What do you think? What would be your thought?
Well, it is only a part of it. Tone at the top, the view, right? How you approach it, how we approach this is definitely, the first step has to be taken by the management. But I would always, I mean, in an organization, I mean, I as a person who works for the banking industry, what I would always think is there can also be a bottom to top approach on this. Let me take an example. Now, in banking, we have different products and on the shelf for customers. Now, we might have different sales team in each silo, which increases cost, right? Because you're in your silo, you're only interested in selling the product that you have been asked to sell. Because your target for the year, right, your KPIs are set around the products that you sell in your silo. What if we bring the sales team together and tell them, look, you're not selling only your product. You need to now sell the product of the other silos, what we internally call cross-selling. So if a customer were to come for, shall we say, to open an account and say, I need a overdraft, or I need to open a cash account. Yes, you certainly do help your cash account, and it doesn't stop there, right? You would start asking the question, because at the time of opening the account, you get what we call you do what we call a know your client, thing. And then when you do that brief, you understand what the client's business is. And once you do that, you ask the client, what are you doing? I'm importing something, right? Then you say, okay, if you're importing, can I give you a trade line for you to import, right? And so then that person gets a trade line and he opens an LC and brings down goods. When the client brings down the goods, he has to pay in foreign currency to the supplier, and there comes the foreign exchange part of it, and the bank makes revenue from that. So this cross-sell is very important. And who can do that? It's not the management, it's the sales team, right? I think hopefully we will get there in this discussion today. How do we recognize the sales team for selling other person's product? That is also important. Management has to recognize that and have a system in place. So it's not purely management alone. It's how the management will put in place a process to understand this cross-selling. But I also feel very, very strongly that it can also start from the bottom to top, where the sales teams come together and cross-sell across silos.
Thank you, Dhakshitha. Venura, the question is for you. In technological environment, how does this particular element of clarity, or I'll take the same line where Dhakshitha ends up. We always talk about be the brand ambassador of the organization. You are the brand ambassador. We give that message to the employer. Can your technical person go and sell a product to their customer or generate a lead for the customer? Can it be done in your particular environment? Because as rightly said by Dhakshitha, I should be able to sell any product of my organization. For that, I need to be aware about what I am selling, what my organization does. But when a technological person just he go and troubleshoot and come, is that the way to do it, or do you think we can go the next step of cross-selling your business to other people?
Sure, Azeem. I think this is a very critical area, and also it's not an easy problem to crack, especially if you look at the ICT business in Dialog. It's a very large portfolio. Everything from complex cloud connectivity to public cloud, from AWS to Amazon, AWS to Microsoft to Google, etc. are there. On the other end of it, you've got LBS tracking solutions that are locally installed and locally managed by a small vendor. And we've got everything in between. Now, to ask a single individual to be able to cross-sell or even offer this complete portfolio is a challenge. But our sales team does. And this is targeting all the way from large enterprise to SME. It's a very tough job. And these sales guys, to be honest, they need to know a little bit about the product. They need to understand the value proposition each product offers. So when they have a discussion with a customer, it is really a discussion about, okay, how is it going? What are the problems, challenges you're facing? Potentially, how can these multitude of products start to address some of these challenges? Now, as I mentioned, for him to be able to talk about any of these solutions in depth, it's impossible. So typically what happens is he understands the customer's requirements and he comes back to essentially a pre-sales or a product manager who would then support in the selling of this solution, etc. And that is really where the collaboration needs to happen. Because if these two teams are not joined up, and I think as Dhakshitha mentioned, if there isn't a good overall incentive plan linking all of these various elements in the sales cycle together, it doesn't work, because these two teams are very different. One guy is a sales guy. He's all about relationship, understanding, the business problem, etc. Whereas the other person is a product specialist. He's all about the technology. Of course, he's about the technology, understanding how what problems it solves. But he's about depth in that product. So these two teams working together hand in hand is the only way that we can build a solution for a customer, and the only way we can win a sale. So collaboration here and breaking down the silos is absolutely critical. How we try to do it First thing is about goal congruence. The schemes linking the teams together, the sales compensation packages, the training, ensuring that the teams work together regularly. Simple tools like Salesforce automation tools, etc., give visibility of what the salesperson is looking at and what the pre-sales or the product team should be supporting on. And finally, it actually just comes down to relationship. The salesperson thinks, okay, I have a good feeling about this. I am going to rig up that product manager because I'm familiar, I worked with him before, I've got a good relationship. I know he's got my back when I go to the customer to answer those difficult questions. So you could do everything right with the process and tools, but as I said, it then boils down to the individuals and the relationship and the culture between the two teams.
Great, perfect. So, gentlemen, we have the first question in line now. I think anybody can answer on this. So there's a question like, is the selling of the product or service only the responsibility of the salesperson? What about other staff? This is what we have been talking. So we talked about technical and salesperson. What about finance? What about HR? What about audit? What about risk? What do you think? What will we take? Whether would like to take this question first?
Sure. I think I'd like to quote Sanjeeva Veeravarna from WSO2. I think he said this, I think, in multiple forums and even with me, when I was working with him. And I think it is very much along the lines of everyone here is a salesperson, from the finance person to the engineer. And especially in my sector, my end of the woods, it is quite often that you have an engineer working directly with the customer. In fact, the engineer will spend more time with the customer than a salesperson or management or anything else. And it's a different skill set, but the engineer needs to learn, understand what the customer's problems are, and start thinking a bit like a salesperson, seeing, oh, there's an opportunity here. Or start thinking, genuinely caring about the customer. Oh, I should try to solve this problem for the customer. Maybe these products we have in our portfolio will help. I don't know too much about it, but let me go and find the information. So it's all about your approach to serving the customer, how you interact with the customer, that drives the right kind of behavior. Now, building the skills and giving access to a knowledge base so that person knows what to sell, those come after. But it's very important that your approach and engagement to the customer is all about serving them and trying to address a problem. So whether it's an engineer who's doing an implementation project, installing some servers in a data center for a customer, whether it's a account manager who's there to make a sale or do a collection, or whether it's two people who are catching up over a drink or over a meal, it should be you're trying to help the other person. It's that kind of engagement which is the soft sell. And to be honest, in this kind of industry where you're talking about selling complex solutions, it's the best kind of sell. It's not a hard sell driven through, this is an account manager trying to push this to you because we've got a sales target and you must buy this. It is coming from someone else, not a salesperson. And I think that's very powerful when you get that right.
Dhakshitha, your take on this?
It is definitely not only the sales team's responsibility. I will give a reason, and I will give an example. If you are, shall we say, selling a product, right? You have the research team who will probably do the survey and say, yes, this is a product that will sell. And then you need to understand, okay, we bring down this product, where are we going to source this product from? So this is where the external parties also come into the picture. It's not only organization, right? Your supply chain, are they how, where are you going to source your product from? How are you going to fund this product? Do you have enough lines with the banks to actually fund this product, right? So the finance team comes in. Also, when you say you think it's a good product, it's going to sell fast, you bring it down, you have your supply chain coming through, right? and you have the bank line, so you take money from the bank and you start funding, you bring down your goods, you start selling, right? But has the tax person looked at this? What if your that product coming into your country is taxed at 50%, 60%, or not at 15%, right? Where are your margins then? So it is very important. And also, if there is shall we say, an after sales team that is involved, and if they are thinly spread, right, the time that they will take to attend to a breakdown, if it's going to take 3 days or a week, right, those all things need to be looked at. The time that you spend, right, the cost to your organization of selling this product, right? So how do you figure out and understand what the cost, how much of time, all this? There has to be collaboration from whom? Probably the finance team, right, the after sales team, the tax people, all that. So it is important. It's not only the sole responsibility of the marketing and the sales teams.
Perfect. Thank you, Dhakshitha, for that answer. So, ladies and gentlemen who have just joined us, we are in the Reset and Go Season 3, Revive and Thrive. I am in conversation with Venura Mendis, Head of ICT Business and Dialog, Axiata, and Dhakshitha Serasundara, Director, Deutsche Bank. So today we are talking about breaking down silos towards collaboration, one of the key elements for today's business. So with that, I would like to pose the question, gentlemen, on this platform. We are talking about getting out of silo. We all know this pandemic has led us to different level of doing business, right? Now, one of the key elements is working from home, right? So don't this particular concept bring us back again into a silo mentality? No, I'm here alone talking to you. I don't have anyone behind. I don't have, my production team is online. Virtually, we are doing this. So again, the mentality which I'm trying to create is more towards a silo effect, right? So what would be your take? How do you guys do differently in your organization or with your own experience? Working from home, how can we break into a collaboration mode? Venura?
So Azeem, I think just referring back to your previous question around communication, collaboration, and what I was saying earlier about relationship and culture. Unfortunately, these are unprecedented times. It's completely disrupted how we work. In the past, I've worked with quite a lot of international clients, and I've done large workshops in forums like this, but I've never been in a situation where I've not been able to sit together with my team and work through a problem. So it's tough. It's tough, and we've all have to learn and adapt, etc. But to some extent, for example, in Dialog, there's been a digital transformation project that's been going on for a couple of years, and I can't say we have solved all the problems, but we have made a lot of progress in terms of moving a lot of the interactions that would normally be paper-based or face-to-face, etc., onto tools and platforms that have made sharing information, communication, although nothing beats a face-to-face conversation, it has started to address some of these things. Information is shared digitally across all the teams, not just information from a PowerPoint on a Microsoft Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting, but essentially, tasks, operational activities, information, etc. And that transparency is made available across the whole organization through, trouble ticketing systems, wikis, etc. This helps a lot, because it now means that what you would normally sit in your office and have meetings in a room, or you would walk to 3 people's desks, etc. Now that information is all available to you from home, or even on your mobile phone remotely. Of course, that's just one element of it. Making the information available, having the tools available goes only so far. The working practices need to change. Now, a key part of digital transformation is agile working practices. And an absolute critical thing about agile practices is about creating cross-functional teams. So it's all about creating a cross-functional team, for example, someone from product, from engineering, operations, sales, brought together to run and deliver a single outcome, a single initiative. So this cross-functional team has to work together. It doesn't matter whether you're in sales or whether you're in engineering, you're held accountable for the outcome of that initiative. This immediately means that these guys need to work together. So, agile practices such as, the daily stand-up meetings, the 15-minute meetings that work brilliantly when you're together in a room and you've got a board that you could, put your stories on. You now have to do on Microsoft Teams. And Microsoft Teams have, Kanban boards, etc., that you can use. So it is starting to adopt these tools and starting to adopt these working practices. The 15-minute stand-up that you do online and the 15-minute wrap-up call in the day is now absolutely critical, because that's your only human, interaction, or your interaction with the team. So it is tools, the right processors, and also the aptitude of the people to adapt to change and start utilizing these tools most effectively. So these are the three problems to crack, and it's not an easy one.
Thank you, Venura. I think our viewers who are just looking at the session, I think there are nice inputs coming from the technological sector, how we can keep engaging our employees towards this collaboration even though working from home. I think that's a fantastic tip. Thank you very much, Venura, on that particular. So Dhakshitha, what would be the take on this, on the banking sector? I know banking is an essential services in this particular pandemic situation. Does people work from home? Might be yes, with certain things and with the technology. How do you think we can collaborate in the banking sector with this?
Yes, banking has become an essential service, but I think the banking industry, compared to a lot of other industries, have been prepared for a pandemic situation. It is the banks that came to the customers long years ago and said, you don't have to visit the bank anymore. Everything is online. You have your app, or you have your internet banking. Now this is something that has caught on in the banking industry for a long time. So it was actually, in a way, it was easier for the banking industry to adapt into working without any problem. But in the banking industry also, what we have understood is certain areas that we thought that we could never work from home have been working from home for the last 6-7 months, right? So what is the underlying of this? What is the message here? That sometimes you need to have a pandemic situation for you to innovate, right? Where you are pushed to innovate. But coming back to silos discussion, sometimes I feel, Azeem, that whether you're working in your own room from home, sometimes it is the same when you're working in an organization. You're in your own room, working by yourself, and it is not different to what you're doing at home, right? So if there is no change, that means the organization is definitely in a silo, right? Of course, we can discuss about, it actually, what is that team concept, as Venura pointed out, right? So that sometimes becomes an issue, which is a complete and HR discussion, but you certainly cannot be in a silo but work from home and completely have interaction. It is challenging, as Venura pointed out. It's very challenging, but I will give one example. You can certainly have, you can use the technology to have informal meetings, like on a Friday evening, where you come together with your team and you have a virtual drink or whatever you call it, in terms of keeping the team going, right? So those things are a mix and match, and I have nothing more to add there.
So Dhakshitha, my take on this is how much we talk about fintech, how much we talk about digitalization, the banking sector still lives in silo, isn't it?
Very much, very much, because banking sector requires confidentiality. Do not forget, unlike many organizations or industries, banking sector is an industry. It's the most regulated industry in the world, right? Sometimes due to what the banks themselves have done, but sometimes also due to two things. One is what is close to people generally is their money, their wealth. And what are banks doing? Bank is handling those people's money, is the wealth. And also the information that you provide generally is very confidential information about people. And this communication cannot go across, right? There's confidentiality that we have with the clients. If, for example, if I have a team that is collaborating with me, but that team for cost purposes is sitting in another country, can I pass this information of my customer cross-border via an email to my team, shall we say, whose back office is sitting in another country, right? Countries' laws are different. So, for example, one country's laws will say you cannot do that. You're breaching confidentiality. So that sometimes creates silos in the banking industry. But banks have tried to come out of this because we do have, got consent to and looked at legal aspects to ensure that the information that we pass on among the silos is that we do not breach any confidentiality, right? And across geographies. But I would not disagree with you wholeheartedly that it is still working in silos. But we've just certainly given it a try, and we've been successful in certain areas.
Thank you, Dhakshitha. I think we should acknowledge that banking sector is very regulated, so there are a lot of things are there. As you rightly pointed on the early of the conversation, the element of trust coming to picture when it comes into collaboration, getting out of the silo. So when you talk about trust, the leadership plays a key role in terms of empowering people, encouraging or engaging people. So E into getting out of this silo, right? How come a leader? Now we always say CEO's culture is the organization culture. If you bring it down, the respective HOD or the line manager's culture will be that team's culture. If that line manager or the leader being a silo, obviously his team becomes silos, right? As a leadership role, I think you guys are both in a leadership role. How do you encourage your team to get out of this silo effect? Venura, you want to get to this?
Sure. So I think you're entirely right. I think it's a culture, and the leader is to a large extent driving the culture. The leaders have a view of the bigger picture. They know what the organization is trying to achieve. They have a view. They probably were involved in creating that vision and mission, right? So it is their job to make sure the rest of their teams understand. And I'm not suggesting it's a top-down push forcing people to collaborate, but it's giving the right signals. And it starts from you yourself, talking to the adjacent verticals, the people that you interact with, etc. Their leadership frequently, strongly aligning, on their approach to business, their approach to solving problems. And finally, when you do hit challenges, because you do when things go wrong, as I mentioned, one of the side effects of this silo mentality is this whole CYA. You pass the ball, it's not my problem, it's theirs, or blame them, or we failed to win this deal because of this, they didn't do their job. Well, the leadership needs to own that, or that particular leader of that function needs to own that. He needs to admit, look, we lost this. There are reasons why we lost this. but it's not because that person dropped the ball. It's because we dropped the ball. So it's up to him to build that conversation, culture in the organization and encourage his team to work with other people to make sure collectively, or the other team to collectively, win that deal or achieve that objective. So it's that approach, and of course, trust and communication, right? The sales teams got to know that the engineering has got their back, got to know that they will step up and deliver something they promised. They shouldn't be thinking about, oh my God, will we be able to do this? Oh my God, will I be able to give my, customer the right information? No, he needs to be able to trust completely. This team has got my back. I will, I'll do my job because I know they'll do theirs. So it's that, and that comes from, successfully, delivering projects, successfully winning deals, and of course from open, transparent communication. So I think trust, communication, and ownership, and not just ownership, not just being responsible for the little bit in the chain that you have to do, but taking ownership of that outcome. That's the culture leaders need to build in an organization.
So whenever you talk about ownership, right, you're taking the responsibility. What if you are not empowered to do that responsibility properly? Do you think you still work on the silo, or you'll be dependable on your line manager who is a silo? What do you think?
No, that's a good point. Now, when you're not in an organization, when you're empowered to make decisions and to support, then you're in trouble. You could be in a situation where one of the team members would go, hey, why are you getting involved in my patch? This is my job. Stick to your patch and do your job. But that doesn't mean that that employee shouldn't still do it. That's my view. You might not be particularly responsible for a task, you might not be accountable for a task, but if you see something is going wrong, as an employee of that company, you have a responsibility to call it out. Now, you might not be senior enough in an organization to drive change and make it happen, but you have a responsibility to call it out. And the leadership has a responsibility to make sure that voice is heard and try to address that problem. Now, I know, and I'm sure, Dhakshitha has also been in these sort of situations. There are quite often problems. It's pretty obvious there's a problem, etc. There's an issue here, with people, with process, etc. But for a lot of reasons, it's not something you can fix, right? Then that is about having a conversation with the individual saying, look, we understand, but we can't fix this for this reason. There are these other challenges. Think broad, and this is why we can't do this. But let's work together to try and address it. If you shut the person down and say, look, stick to your area, etc., you're killing it. And that is not just for collaboration, that kills innovation, kills employee engagement, and a whole bunch of things.
Thank you, Venura, on that one. So, Dhakshitha, as in a leadership role you are in, being in your establishment, how does leadership play a key role in terms of bringing out collaboration in your organization, getting out of that silo? What sort of a leadership element you think should play?
There is definitely an element of leadership that is required. I'll tell you why. Because generally, when you try to break down the silo mentality, where will the resistance come from? Resistance will obviously come from people who are profiting from the existing process within your organization. They will say, why do we want to change this, right? But then comes the leadership that says, no, because why are you a leader? Because you are a leader who is in the driving seat and you need to see ahead of you through the windscreen, right? So you see the change coming, right? You need to be able to see that change and make the changes of your organization in such a way, change gears, right? Switch on your wipers or get ready, switch on your lights to ensure that you continue to drive that organization forward. So it is the leadership that has to ensure that the people, not only people who are profiteering from the existing process needs to understand, but people, with that change, that people who are not very much profiteering from that also, have a chance to say. So here comes where the management also gives an opportunity for people to talk, right? That is where diversity comes in. You need to have diverse people in your organization, and time again, research papers that come out of universities, research organizations, increasingly direct towards that the more diversity you have, right, and the more you listen as a leader, right, the far quicker that your organization can be nimble towards change and to breaking down silos.
Thank you. So, gentlemen, I think this particular topic has been very interesting. There are a lot of questions coming in for me. So I'm just picking one because benefit of the time. The question would be, will micromanaging create more silos? What do you think, gentlemen? Anybody want to take? Dhakshitha?
Yeah, I think, oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead, Dhakshitha.
No, it's okay. Please go ahead. I was just quiet. That's what I just picked up.
No, I think, so micromanaging will not necessarily create silos, because end of the day, if the collaboration between the various teams and the various individuals is still happening, in my view, it won't really, impact things, because if you're all working towards the same goal, there's good communication between all the silos. Micromanagement is more, an operational directive approach to getting things done. Of course, micromanagement itself has other side effects. If you micromanage someone, that means you're not necessarily listening to what they're saying. You're not understanding their problems. You're not giving them the freedom or the accountability to do things. And you also start to feel, the trust breaking down. Clearly, your line manager doesn't trust that you can get this done, so you're checking every single detail, etc. Now, all of those things that I mentioned, those side effects can cause silos. But again, my view is, there's an old saying. It's about, for a leader, it's not, if you micromanage, you cannot scale, right? So then you're still accountable for things. And if you can't effectively hold your team accountable for things, you have no option but to micromanage. And then you have to go to this cycle of, you do a lot of monitoring, you build a lot of tools to monitor, etc., etc., etc. That leads to a bunch of challenges.
Actually, what would be your answer for this question? Same view or different view, Dhakshitha?
I don't have a view that is very different to what Venura mentioned. Micro leaders should not micromanage, that's for sure. But sometimes it can lead to silo mentality. But what is more important is that the leadership also needs to ensure that there is a formal mechanism in place to recognize the people who work across silos and cross-sell, right? So that if you're doing cross-selling, that you are recognized for that and you're compensated. Don't forget, most of the people who are listening to this conversation are employees and not employers, right? So as an employee, naturally you work for an organization, you have loyalty towards that organization, but then finally there comes the question, what is in it for me, right? So if you are not recognized by the leadership, and if there is no formal process in place to recognize that, right, it won't work. It won't work. But micromanaging is certainly not the leadership's role.
Thank you, Dhakshitha. So gentlemen, it's quite interesting to see that how does the collaboration. Yeah, we have been talking. We have seen a lot of organizations, especially in Sri Lankan context. When we came on the first lockdown, a lot of retailers were asked to deliver to our home stuff, our retail stuff, like essential stuff. So how the mobility, like stuff like PickMe, they partnered with Satos Outlet. There are examples that collaboration had made a lot of profitability for the organization. I think that's a key example. I think me and you, everybody need to have getting that collaboration mode. And a lot of banks are partnering with a lot of retail outlet, transportation mode, just to cross sell their businesses. I think that's the unique element of collaboration, getting out that those days it's only my business, but it's our business. With that line, I would like to pose this question: where does the most of the organization go wrong in breaking these silos? Dhakshitha, you want to start off first?
Tough question. Where we go wrong in trying to break down silos, I think one thing is, going back to empowering people. Venura mentioned that earlier on. Empowering is not empowering is actually one reason, why these things things do, and also the fact that there is no proper system to recognize employees' contribution for not working in silos, right? And if I may go back to what Venura mentioned earlier on, sometimes, yes, when you try to build bridges and work across, sometimes it creates management issues where people say, why are you coming into my area, right? That kind of mentality, right, is key. So culture is very, very important, right? If you don't have the proper culture and mentality in people, in your teams, individuals, it becomes a very, very, it's a big impediment towards breaking down silos.
Venura, what your
Yeah,
thoughts?
so I think, so I think where people get things wrong is around, to some extent, focusing too much on the tools and the processes, because yes, you need to have the right tools, you need to have the right structures in place, so you have these cross-functional teams, everyone working together, etc. But actually getting success out of those tools, getting success out of those new processes is all around a change management process. And that is all about listening to people, adapting the people, changing the culture of the organization. And now that, to me, is all about the leadership. It's about the leadership, their behavior, their interactions, and how they essentially handle, steer the ship, essentially. So for me, I think, unfortunately, the reason a lot of the companies struggle is not having the right leadership or the right drive. So I think let me clarify that a bit further. You could have an organization where the top of the organization is very focused around driving a change management project and effective change and breaking down those silos. But if you look at the next level of leadership, if they are thinking, I don't want to be supporting this project because this is taking away my position, my little castle that I have built is now getting weakened by this new structure, it's failed. So I think that's the gap. So there could be the vision, the process, the tools, but if you don't have that buy-in from that next level of leadership that drives this change across the organization, it's torpedoed before it starts.
Thank you. So I think we are almost nearing the ending of our conversation. So I'm just going to pose the last question for you both gentlemen. There have been a lot of element talking around developing training on this collaboration, cross-functional element to create that harness. Because when it comes to like training and development or talking about training, if you see, for a certain segment of training, there will be people coming from different segment or departments or unit or divisions, which that enhance the collaboration or cross-functional element to it. So my final question is, with that lead, what sort of approach you think the Sri Lankan corporates, your final message on this, to break down this silo effect? Can training be a part of it? Can it be turn around things, this silo effect, into a collaboration? Gentlemen, I'll start with Venura and end up with Dhakshitha.
So I think training will help with some of the easy elements, which is how to use the tools, how to use the processes, how you get a team running together in one direction. The soft elements of how you communicate, how you listen, the behavioral elements, you can train, definitely. But that's a harder thing to train, and that is a different kind of training. So those soft skills, those things that drive collaboration, yes, we can be trained, but it's harder and it's different to the agile training that you would do, different to the training that you would do on Teams, different to the training that you would do on Jira, etc.
So Venura, again, the final view from your end, your personal and your experience with it. Can you tell me your last message? How do you want our people to just understand why you need to break the silos and why you need to get into collaboration?
Well, I think it's survival. I think why, as a business, we exist. Well, we exist to solve customers' problems, hopefully, profitably, so we can keep operating. And we certainly can't do that if every part of the organization is not thinking about serving the customer. They're thinking about addressing their specific KPI, their specific functional area. You might have the best engineers, but you might have the best salespeople and you might have the best accountants, but you will fail as a business.
Thank you, Venura. So Dhakshitha, again, posing your question, can training be a part of the implementation process of breaking out silos? What do you think?
Yes, training can certainly be part of breaking down the silos, because do not forget that we all are different. We all come from different backgrounds, and we all have different trainings and different skill sets. So it's important to have that training to bring all those together. And the more I am a firm believer that the more diversity you have in your team, right, the better it is that you can break down those silos, and the training would certainly help.
Thank you. And actually, your last message, breaking down silos and bring that collaboration. What's in it for everyone in Sri Lankan context?
If I may start the Sri Lankan context, what is required is change of culture. We tend to be focused more on a lot of things that is actually inhibits breaking down silos, right? You need to, your culture, your mentality has to change significantly, and that is something that needs to not be given by way of your corporate leadership, and I think it's the political leadership and the religious leadership also has to plays a major role, right? And the learning institutions that depart knowledge to people. So it is the mentality and the culture of how you want to do things. That is my strong message. I think we need to change. The mentality has to change. The culture of diversity and coming together as a team and understanding the diversity of a team to forge ahead is very, very key in collaborating and breaking silos.
All right. So thank you, gentlemen. So that's the time that we have for. So we were listening to Venura Mendis, Head of ICT Business Dialog Axiata. Thank you very much, Venura, for joining us today, spending your valuable time with us. And Dhakshitha Serasundara, Director, Deutsche Bank. Mr. Dhakshitha, thank you very much for you also spending your valuable time in the morning. So ladies and gentlemen, so that's the end of breaking down silos towards collaboration. A lot of input. The whole summary, we talk about empower, engaging, and more into building that culture of collaboration. Of course, training and facilitation can be part of it, but leadership is what we look forward to have, that breaking down silos. So with that, ending the conversation, I am your host. My name is Azeem Saheer. I'm looking forward to see you another exciting conversation with fantastic individual. So with that ending and passing over to Anton Thailand. Over to you, Anton.
Thank you, Azeem. Thank you, Venura. Thank you, Dhakshitha, for weighing in for this beautiful conversation. It is about time we realize that the sum of our ambition can only be realized through open collaboration and breaking down silos. Leaving you with those thoughts, and a quick thank you to H1 for being our technology partners, and for third season running. Coming up in the next hour of This, That, and the Other, with Varun. They will be discussing the good, the bad, and the ugly of controversial topics as usual, and today is no exception as they dissect the bias, the expats and trading spouses, the trials and tribulations of working abroad. So on that note, thank you very much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of the day. Stay safe, stay productive.